We are beauty, we are grace.
So good morning. My name is Reverend Dr. Ron Cox, and I want to welcome you to the Sunday celebration for the Center for Spiritual Living Space Coast. This would be a really good time, if you haven't done it, to turn off any cell phones. And if there's anybody here that's never been to the Center for Spiritual Living before, we believe there's one God, many paths to that God, and we're here to love, honor, and support you, no matter what your divine path is. And the Center for Spiritual Living Space Coast is a safe haven for people of all beliefs and lifestyles, whoever you are and wherever you find yourself on your journey of faith. You're welcome here. So, our practitioner today is my wife, Becky, and our reader is Ed Powers. And I usually never hear what somebody's going to read, but Ed read it to me yesterday. It is really, I think it's really, really good. So I get up here every week when we're going to do announcements, and I kid around that I know people come to church. They don't come to hear the message. They come to hear for announcements. And so today, I really do have long announcements, so I'm apologizing in advance. I want to talk to you about some upcoming classes and events that we're going to be having throughout the summer. And we actually will have some more, but these are the first few. So first, Kristen Schmidt, who's sitting over here, is going to have a class on emotional freedom technique, which is also referred to as tapping. And tapping is a technique that's used to treat symptoms related to stress, anxiety, depression, insomnia, and more. And she's going to hold the class a week from tomorrow. That's Monday, May 16th, from 5 to 6 p.m. on Zoom. And I'm not sure who's up there and not, but Bob Fleury, is Bob up there? So Bob Fleury, who's on Zoom today, is going to be facilitating a group for people, a support group for people who are experiencing PTSD. And Bob will be doing that the first Tuesday of the month, beginning June 7th. And that will also be at Zoom, and it'll be at 7 p.m. Got more. Patrice Rivera, one of our practitioners, is going to be facilitating an intuitive series designed to get people in touch with that still small voice within. And they're going to do it through journaling, through art, through movement, and more. And that class is going to be held in this room on the third Wednesday of the month from 10:30 to 11:45. And there'll be one class in June, one class in July, and one class in August. You know, I thought it was a good idea to do all of this. Now I'm thinking, who's going to remember? We're also going to be having a book discussion group, which the book is going to be The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And we're going to do that on Tuesday afternoons on Zoom. And it will be starting June 7th. And I'll be the facilitator. And we're also going to have a Socrates circle on Thursdays at 2 p.m. on Zoom. And the first session is June 9th. So people have asked me, what's a Socrates circle? And here's what it is. We come, and depending on time, we discuss one or two questions. And here's how it works. Each person gets to speak for 3 minutes. And I time it, so it's 3 minutes. And the guidelines are no interrupting, no fixing, no side talks. Talk about stage and soup. And anybody can decide to speak, or they can just listen. And depending on time, we go around 2 or 3 times. We can really get doing that. And so I thought it would be helpful to give you an idea of some questions that we might do. So I have 4 of them. If you could offer a newborn child one piece of advice, what would it be? What thing have you not done that you really want to do, and what's holding you back? I like this one. Have you been the kind of friend that you want as a friend? And the last one, which is worse, failing or not trying? So that gives you an idea. So we can get pretty deep. So I want to say one more thing about the classes. You know, a church's center depends on people's donations to survive. And one way of getting donations in is to have a class, to teach classes. And so I know 3 of these are going to be on Zoom. And so we would just ask that people go on our website. I think the information is here, and hit the donate button, and it gives you an idea. And we would just request that people taking the classes make a donation to the center. I want to do one last thing. I thought this was particularly relevant on Mother's Day. I saw a really good definition of love this week. I don't know if any of you watched the show This Is Us. Not one person here. Well, yeah, it's a really fabulous show. It's about coming to an end. It's kind of Becky and my excuse to sit down for an hour once a week and just cry our eyes out. Anyway, one of the characters this week was going through a difficult time, and he was an adult, probably in his 40s, and he was talking to his mom, and his mom was assuring him he's divorced, and his mom was assuring him that he would find love again in his life. And she turned around, and I just really like this definition. She said, love is giving your heart away without any expectation. Isn't it neat? Love is giving your heart away without any expectation. And with that, I'll sit down and shut up.
Be still.
So I just invite everybody to turn with me. And if we could just take a few moments of silence, just feeling the gratitude, opening up our hearts. And so from this place of feeling this gratitude, just recognizing this wonderful, infinite, divine spirit that is within the form and the formless, the seen and unseen. And knowing my oneness and infinite power in this infinite loving energy that is always surrounding me. That is who and what I am, always expressing through me, as me, and for me. And I'm knowing the same truth for each and every person. Whether you're here in person, whether you're one of the Zoom participants, I'm going to be watching this recording later on, that each one of us is one in this divine presence, this infinite power that is right here in this room. And knowing that this morning is filled with its joy, filled with its power, presence. And knowing that the same power is within Reverend Dr. Ron, that his message is very clear and loving. I'm knowing this for each participant's readings, that they too are each filled with this divine presence and love. That we are here celebrating and honoring motherhood. Motherhood comes and is expressed through so many different ways. And so we honor this because each is filled with God's power, this wonderful energy that is always surrounding us. And so I give thanks. I give thanks for this unfolding good. That He, God, with me and send us.
Good morning. Well, today is Mother's Day, and it's the day that we honor mothers for all that they contribute to making this world a better place. There's always the card and some flowers to show your appreciation for all that she does, but mothering is a nearly endless job. How else can we honor our mothers, and not just today? She's given you, us, a lot of her time. So give her some of yours. No mother is perfect, but consider the good things that our mother, your mother, instilled in you. Maybe it was compassion for another, or how to value yourself. You are her legacy. Be sure to thank her today and in admirative ways on any ordinary day. Honor your mother's investment in you by cultivating the skills and talents that she saw in you, and be happy and celebrate life. That's probably all moms ever want for us kids anyway.
Thank you, Ed. So believe it or not, with all the announcements I did, I forgot one. And what makes it worse is I have it all written down. Anyway, what I did want to also announce is that usually at the end of our service, we stay on and we talk about the message. We're not going to do that today since it's Mother's Day, and probably a lot of people want to go out to lunch with their mom. So today is kind of a different day. One of the things that I like to do, I don't do it every year, but occasionally for Mother's Day and Father's Day, rather than just hearing from me, we ask people in the congregation if they would like to come and speak about their mom, or on Father's Day, their dad. And so that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to do today. We have, I'm just looking for my list of people that are going to speak. Here we go. So we're going to have, I'm not sure, 7 or 8 people come up today to share with us stories about their mom. And usually these services are really, really warm and touching and loving. And so I'm going to start first, but I want to say something about what I'm going to read. So I did not have a very good relationship with my mother, and I wasn't sure if it would be a good idea for me to read what I wrote. But my wife and our assistant minister Jenna, who I kind of look at as the sister I never had, both said to me, you know, what you wrote is really heartfelt, and it's really important that you do read it, because there are probably other people that are going to be listening today that had difficult times with their moms, and maybe what you write will free them up to be able to give legitimacy to their feelings. And so the only caveat they gave me was go first, so everybody else can lift everybody back up again. So, and probably in between, I had chicken soup for the mother's soul, and I'll do a couple of stories depending on the time. So with that caveat, here I go. Dear Mother, I suppose this letter has been a long time coming. My mother's dead, by the way. Wherever you are, I hope you will read it and know it probably hurts as much to write it as it does for you to read it. Let me begin by saying, I know you did the best, and the anger I felt for so many years has been replaced by a profound sadness that our time together was not more loving. I also know that in your own way, you loved me, and despite all that transpired, I loved you too. Years ago, when my friend Judy Doyle and I were having a conversation about my feelings toward you, I referred to you as a bitch. When I was finished speaking, Judy looked at me and said, "She doesn't sound like a bitch to me. She sounds scared." It was an aha moment for me. I realized that you weren't mean and unthinking, just driven by demons like so many of us are. Yet, that doesn't excuse the pain and hurt you left behind. I've done a lot of forgiveness work around our relationship, and I've come to realize that living with anger serves no purpose, so I've tried to let it go. But I have also come to realize that there will always be a part of me that grieves for the boy and the adult that craved the unconditional love of his mother, and instead received love that always depended on doing it her way. I know life wasn't easy for you. However, my spiritual work has shown me that you were the architect of that life. Can the need to control life be so important that you're willing to give up all of the people who are close to you? Can fear really drive you to push away everyone you love or profess to love? Years ago, Meredith, my daughter, gave me a book for Father's Day. It was titled A Father's Legacy to His Daughter. Each page was blank, except for a question at the top. The idea was for me to read each question and write the answer and return it to her completed. Some of the questions were funny, most were serious. One question was, tell me about a time you spent quality time alone with your mother. I left that page blank. I could not think of one time we spent quality one-on-one time together. How sad for both of us. I missed out on the mother's love. You missed out too. I was a nice kid with a fun sense of humor that you never got to know. There was so much we could have done. After all, we lived in New York City, but there was never time, or perhaps it didn't matter enough. When I think of my dad, I remember many times we spent together. Ball games, lunches, swimming, shooting, talking about life. These are the memories that a legacy is made of. You and I have none. How sad. I do owe you a lot, Mother. I think because of my early experiences, I have learned compassion. I root for the underdog. I reach out when I see a person hurting. When I see a person hurting, I feel. In fact, I think I wear my heart on my sleeve a bit too much. But I would rather err in that direction of kindness than in hardness. Thank you for the sacrifices you made to put me through college. I do appreciate them. I wish we could have talked about your fears. Perhaps I could have helped, but that was not to be. You were opposed, I was confused, Dad was angry, and in the end, we all lost. I often wonder what you would say about the life I've carved out for myself. Would you be joyous that I'm happy at what I do and that I love my life? Or would the fact I hadn't lived the life you would have chosen for me be a barrier between us? Would you still hate me? Or would you have mellowed? I vote for mellowed. Maybe I'm wrong, but at least in my imagination, I could have the mother I never did in real life. And I suppose that is better than nothing. Love, Ron. So, I think I'll try to write it down. Yeah, I think this is a really cute story. It's titled Art 101. This is from Chicken Soup for the Soul. So this woman writes, when I was 34 years old and the mother of my 3 children, I took Art 101 at State College in Tennessee. One day, our instructor announced that the project we had done on the first day of class was to be included in the notebook that would be a major part of our grade. May I do another project? I asked somewhat anxiously. I don't have the first one anymore. The instructor asked, what happened to it? Somewhat embarrassed, I replied, it's on my mother's fridge. She's 34, remember? So I chose the next person to speak after me, because when we did this the last time, she spoke about her mom, and it was a really uplifting conversation, so I figured after what I just did, we could use that. So Claudia, would you come up and talk about your most, Claudia Lambert?
So good to see everybody and be back. Yeah. Well, I was very blessed. My mom's name was Donna Gerald. She was a wonderful mother and great role model. Growing up, she lived in San Francisco and led quite an interesting life in her teen years. And then summer came, and her mother said, "We're going to visit the Watson Ranch." My aunt was married to one of the Watsons. And at that time, when you traveled, you went for a month or 6 weeks because it was, the traveling was hard. So she ended up in Wyoming. She was 11, and one of the cowboy's sons was 19, and she decided she was going to marry him. Later, she came home from school at 16, and he was studying dressed in his uniform. He had joined the Navy and asked her to marry him. They had 4 girls together. We were very blessed. My dad was stationed in Hawaii, and my mom had a turquoise 56 Chevy. She was the only car in the whole Navy housing. So my mom and the car and all of us girls were very busy. Our house was command central. My mom, not a nurse at the time, every time a child or an animal got wounded, they were brought to our home. It was wonderful. I had the inside scoop even then. She was a wonderful mother, friend, wife. She would have craft classes during the summer where she would teach us to sew and garden and cook and have compassion for all who are not so fortunate. Around her 30s, my parents got a divorce and she decided to become an RN. She was a nurse for 40 years. She ended up moving out of California and moving to Oregon with her husband and my 2 little sisters. There she lived the rest of her life, gardening and quilting and doing everything that made her happy. She always had a funny little joke. She said, "If I could only live long enough to use all my fabric, that would be great." Well, when we found out that every bed was big totes of fabric, as so was the garage, she would have had to be well over 100 to do that. But she was a great mom and very strict at times and kept her word, whether you were on restriction or not. She was not ever going to bend it. So there was no whining about any of that. But I feel so blessed that she was my mother and I learned so much from her. Thank you.
So, you know what, I'll read something else from Chicken Soup. So, this is a really touching one, and it's titled, "Most Kids Are Born Only Once." Mother is always there when you need her. She helps, protects, listens, advises, nurtures physically and morally. She made sure that her family is loved 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks out of the year. At least that's how I remember my mother. For the few precious years I was blessed to have her. But no words can describe the sacrifice she made out of love for me, her young son. I was 19 years old and I was being taken to a concentration camp with a large group of other Jews. It was clear that we were destined to die. Suddenly, my mother stepped in and traded places with me. And although it was more than 50 years ago, I will never forget her last words to me and her goodbye look. I have lived long enough. You have to survive because you are so young, she said. Most kids are born only once. I was given birth twice by the same mother. So the next person is going to come to us from Zoom, and he's going to speak about his mom. It's Bob Flory. So Bob, you could unmute and show us your face if you want, and tell us about your mom.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I wrote this up, so I'm going to read from the paper. I'm sorry. Yeah, my volume's all the way up. So,
I figured it would help if you turned it up a little bit. Go ahead, Bob.
okay. My mother is one of the most amazing people I know. She was recently written up in her hometown, Cedar City, Utah paper. The reporter who interviewed my mother because she had heard rumors of a 98-year-old woman doing Zumba. She came to find out my mom also did yoga and walked several miles a day. When asked by the reporter if she thought that all that exercise contributed to her longevity, my mother answered no. The very puzzled reporter then asked what she thought contributed most to her long life. My mother looked at her, smiled, and said, "Only the good die young." My mother is active in her church, loves card games, theater, social events, and her Stitch and Bitch group, a group of ladies who sew, knit, and stitch. Again, all this at 98. Going back, my mother was born around the time of the Great Depression in East Orange, New Jersey. Her father was an alcoholic who died young, and her mother was trying to raise 3 young kids during very hard times. To contribute to the problem, my uncle was born visually handicapped, almost blind, with one continually shifting eye. He was often picked upon by the other boys in school. And when they did, my mom got right up in their faces and let them have it. I often wonder how much those young boys later regretted their behavior, as before their very eyes, she quietly grew into a blue-eyed, dark-haired beauty with whom they knew they would never, ever stand a chance. I remember thinking she looked like the neighborhood Elizabeth Taylor. And the humblest part of my mother is that she was oblivious to the effect that she had on men. She just never knew or thought much of it and never noticed the attentions they paid to her. My dad, a Navy man, was often out to sea. And during those times, I noticed how many men would try to take advantage of his absence and how they all crashed and burned. Way to go, Mom. I learned how unfair women were treated by watching my mom, especially after she and my father divorced. Even though she had worked all her life and controlled most of the finances, none of the banks would issue her a loan. Even though she had a job and collateral, she still needed her ex-husband to co-sign for any loans or credit cards. I remember her coming home in tears when the men she worked with got $1 an hour raise and she only got a nickel, despite her being more intelligent than most of them. And I remember the tears when many times she had to quit on a spot because of advances made by male bosses. My mother also instilled in me the value of respecting the downtrodden, the less fortunate, those of different races and religions. Racial slurs, kikes, wops, spics, Polacks, and all the other degradations were never tolerated in my home. A good 10 years before 9/11, my mother was championing for the rights of the Taliban women. And when we lived in Thailand, she voluntarily taught classrooms of Thai students that wanted to learn English for free. She is one with humankind. Another thing I learned from my mom was the freedom to think and be different. My mother explored the theater, painting, stained glass, and played the violin. And she explored the world around her. This came to fruition on her second marriage to the man who became the true love of her life. John was a World War II prisoner of war captured in the Philippines who had survived the Bataan Death March. Like my mom, he was down to earth in a way that endeared him to all. Shortly after she and John got married, they purchased a truck/trailer, and for the next 15 years, they never had a permanent address. Their new home was always the closest KOA campground. They visited every state, including Alaska and Hawaii, and ventured into Mexico several times. They had a blast traveling throughout this homeland, meeting new people and making lasting friendships. They finally settled in Utah, and John passed away about 10 years ago. And the other thing you need to know about my mom is that she loves a good laugh. A woman who I once dated was focused on finding out how many sexual experiences I had had in high school and college. Each time she asked, I told her that as a young man, I had been kidnapped by gypsies and forced to perform sexual favors for their women. And I explained to her that after that horrific experience, I stayed pure until my marriage. And I told the story to my mom. Well, one evening, my date and my mother finally got some alone time together at a gathering we were at. When I returned, my date's face was bright red and she couldn't look me in the eye. I asked her what happened. Sure enough, she had asked my mom about my sexual history. And my mom told her, oh, Bob was a virgin until the day he got married. And then after a slight pause, she added, unless you want to count the time he got kidnapped by gypsies. So I got to ask, has anyone got a joke for my mother? The more risque, the better. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Bob. So, Bob hasn't been on for a while, but I have to add something. Every Sunday night, he told us he speaks to his mom, and he has to start off with a joke. And so when we do our Zoom calls after when Bob is on, I try to always have a joke for him. And the more off color, the more she likes it. So, so I'm gonna do another story. And then if you, nope, you don't wanna go? All right. So I really love this story. It's titled Dance With Me. So this lady writes, when we're young and we dream of love and fulfillment, we think perhaps of a moon-drenched Parisian nights or walks along the beach at sunset. No one tells us that the greatest moments of a lifetime are fleeting, unplanned, and nearly always catch us off guard. Not long ago, I was reading a bedtime story to my 7-year-old daughter, Annie, and I became aware of her focused gaze. She was staring at me with a faraway, trance-like expression. Apparently, completing the tale of Samuel Whisker was not as important as we first thought. I asked what she was thinking about. Mommy, she whispered, I can't stop looking at your pretty face. I almost resolved on the spot. Little did I know how many trying moments the glow of her sincerely loving statement would carry me through over the following years. Not long after, I took my 4-year-old son to an elegant department store where the melodic notes of a classic love song drew us towards a tuxedoed musician playing a grand piano. Sam and I sat down on a marble bench nearby, and he seemed as transfixed by the lilting theme as I was. I didn't realize that Sam had stood up next to me until he turned, took my face in his little hands, and said, dance with me. If only those women strolling under the Paris moon knew the joy of such an invitation made by a round-cheeked boy with baby teeth. Although shoppers openly chuckled, grinned, and pointed at us as we glided and whirled around the open atrium, I would not have traded a dance with such a charming young gentleman if I'd been offered the universe. So two of our speakers haven't shown up. So, next speaker, hey Kerry, can you show us your face and unmute? So Kerry Bell is going to chat about her mom.
Oh shit, that's me. That's me. I think I need to start my video. I'm trying to start it. Oh, I'm trying to start it.
There we go. There we go.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm sorry, guys. I had a little technical difficulty there, but I'm here. I received a call from Ron and Reverend Ron, and he explained to me that he was watching some of my Facebook posts and asked me would I be interested in talking about my mom. And that was a scary thought and an exciting thought. But I will try my best to kind of tell you where I am, who I am, who she was, and hopefully this will, be helpful to what we're doing today. I call my speech a motherless child. I was born in 1970, and my mother was she's 20 years old. Well, I would have been 19 when I was born, 20. She was 20 years old. And she fell in love with a man and pursued that venture, and ultimately it didn't turn out the way she wanted. And so I'm just gonna tell you a little bit about some of the things that she used to say, because when I tried to think of writing about her, it didn't give it. I don't know. So I wanted to talk to her, because as I started to write about her, it felt like an obituary. So I'm just gonna go with what I've been feeling on some of the things that she used to say. When we were young and living our lives, my father died when I was 5. And so at that journey, she became a single mother. And I think that my mother was, she tried to move forward as best she could. She kind of took the realm on and kind of moved forward. One of the weird things she used to say all the time was that water rises to its own level. And when I was younger, I didn't know what that meant. But as I got older, I realized that who you are as a person and what you contribute is far more important than anything else. And so when you come upon something upon life, which will happen, water rises to its own level. Know who you are. Know what you're willing to do. And so following that, here's some other things that she used to say. If you give your word, keep it. I remember this, I'm trying to think back, but I think I was about 10 and something happened, and she asked me my answer, and then I said, yes, of course. And then she said, then give me your word. So I said at the time, okay, and I gave her my word. We went on, and I'm trying to think exactly what time frame it was, but by the next day something had happened, and when I came to her with my excuse, she said, but you gave your word. And so I said, yeah, I did, but I was trying to, get what I want. And she ultimately came back and said, you gave your word. So, that's it. And I was punished, and that was that. So that was one. knowledge is power. My mother was big on education. She believed that education was the key to you opening whatever door to whatever you wanted to do. Big proponent. Um, um, yeah, just a big proponent for that. When it came to men, she said to me when I was about, I think I was 20 or 21, she said to me, know who you are as a woman, know what you have to contribute to men, but carry yourself in a way that's a lady at all times. And that's exactly what I tried to do. Okay. So she had come to visit me when I was in my young 20s, just had my daughter. And she came to me and she came to visit. We went out and we had dinner. Or 5. Okay. And so we had dinner and we're hanging out, and this guy comes by and he's trying to hit on the group of the women at the table. And the women at the table were all laughing and enjoying ourselves. And so the man's trying to pick somebody up. And he gets to my mom and he says, well, what about you? Being funny because she was a little bit older. And she said, some mountains are so majestic, mere mortal men may not climb. It said everything everything that she had to say about womanhood. She was very clear on womanhood, but you had to really work for it. And I thought that was profound and it stuck with me. So that's just a little bit. I wish I could give you more because honestly, it's only been 2.5 years and it's still pretty fresh for me, but I adored my mother. She was a wonderful, wise, smart, witty, beautiful woman. And I couldn't do her justice. Just know that I'm missing her terribly. And if that means anything, I think it shows what motherhood is. It's the biggest job of your life. And my mother handled it like a queen. I'm very, very sad without her, but I know she would want me to move forward. And so that's what I've done. So if that helps, sorry. Happy Mother's Day to everybody.
So I just want to go to that, Kerry. Kerry and Becky and I met, and her husband Mark, when we had a center in Arizona. And Kerry has 2 daughters, and she just now said how her mother really focused and felt that education was important. And so Kerry and I had this dance that we would do just about every week. She would come with Mark and their 2 daughters, and I would say to her, boy, those girls are beautiful. And she would say, don't tell me they're beautiful, Reverend Ron. Tell me how smart they are. Tell me what good people they are. And so it became almost every week, it became our dance. So we're gonna go a little over, but I think next I would call on my wife Becky to read what she wrote about her mom.
Well, so today is a special day. It's actually my mother's birthday. And she would have been 97 years old. But unfortunately, she left this world at the young age of 86 in 2011. And so there's a quote from Ernest Holmes. And Ernest Holmes was a founder of Centers for Spiritual Living. And so when there's a quote from him when he experienced a cosmic illumination while giving a talk at the Church of Religious Science in Whittier, California. And it was this: "Oh God, the veil is thin between. We do mingle with the hosts of heaven." And I know that this veil that he spoke about parted for a few precious seconds right after my mother made her transition. In those last days after her death, there had been some feelings of guilt on my part for not being there at her side when she died. The only closure was the last conversation on the phone with her that Ron and I had. It was a difficult time for me at that time to really fully express how I felt and how grateful I was for the life she gave me. So, instead of really, telling her all of this, I was listening to Ron talk to her most of the time, just, joking around with her. As I later found out from my family, it was the last lucid conversation she had. Still, I really felt the guilt of not being there with her. But it was this cosmic experience I had that brought me to a place of comfort. So Ron and I still lived in our condo in Merritt Island. And I remember that at that time, I was walking around our dining room table towards the kitchen. And all of a sudden, I heard my mother's voice come from one of the empty chairs around the dining table. And she was saying in the same way and saying the same words of, "I love you, honey," that I used to hear growing up. And I just stared at that chair and I felt her presence. And I had no doubt that she was there. So one of the things that connected the two of us was an interest in self-growth. My mother used to introduce me to books on parapsychology and positive thinking in my teen years, and which would eventually lead me to this philosophy found in religious science. We also have these experiences of calling one another at the exact moment we knew it would be the other calling. So there's no doubt that she's still with me. I believe that consciousness goes beyond this physical world and exists in the world beyond. So I want to say, dear mother, if you're hearing me right now, I hope wherever you are right now, you are blessed with deep joy. Please forgive me for my ingratitude for all that you sacrificed. Thank you for everything that you did, the long hours of work you put in so that I could have the things I had growing up, for the optimistic remarks to my depressed moods when I was away at school, for instilling in me the foundations of hard work and integrity. So we as humans try to be the best possible versions of ourselves. Sometimes we hit the mark, and other times we really miss it completely. I used to wonder why you said or would do certain things, but I've come to an understanding that because I never knew what your childhood was like and the experiences you went through, you came to motherhood with the best possible tools you had at that time to bring up two very independent-minded children. So it wasn't always easy for a single mom to do this, but you really had the inner and outer strength to accomplish this. I do appreciate everything you did, and I love you dearly. Happy birthday and happy birthday.
So I told Becky, I want to say something about your mother. And she said, no, it's my mother. I'm going to do it. But despite that, I'm going to do it. So I actually told this story before, but there's people here that never heard it. So when Becky's mom would come to visit us, she was, elderly, and she didn't have a lot of energy. So she didn't want to do a lot of things. And one of the things that she did that drove us crazy, frankly, was she would sit in front of the TV and watch one news station all day. And it wasn't the political, it was a very political station. And it was so far from what Becky and I believed. That was part of why we didn't like it. But the other reason was the news stories don't change. And I mean, she'd sit there from morning till night, and so you'd hear the same stories over and over again, only the announcers would change. So one night, I said to Becky, I can't take this anymore, I'm gonna deal with it. And Becky said, what are you gonna do? And I said, you'll see. So I went to her mother and I said, I need to change the station. And she said, why? And I said, because Paula Zahn, this was a long time ago. Some of you might know who she is. She's a very beautiful blonde lady, and she had a show on CNN. So I told her mother I needed to watch Paula Zahn on TV. And her mother said, how come? And I said, now Becky had no idea what I was going to do. I turned to Becky and I said, Becky, I've come clean to you. You know, so she's your mom. I'm going to tell your mom. Now she has no idea what I'm going to do. And I turned to her mom and I said, I need to watch Paula Zahn because I'm having an affair with Paula Zahn. And if I don't watch her every night, she really gets pissed off at me. Her mother looked at me and she said, you're having an affair with Paula Zahn? And I said, yes, I am. And she said, tell me, does Paula know? So this is the place in the service where we would normally do the offertory. But in the interest of time, since it's 10 after, I'm not going to do it. Hey, Ed, could you put the other slide up for me? So what we'll do, I wanted to show you this basket. We'll put it on the table in the back and just request that you would make an offering in that basket. And over here for you Zoomers, it shows how you can donate through our website. Just go on, hit the donate button, and it'll tell you how you can do it by check, by PayPal, and so you can see it there. So this is also the time that I would do the closing prayer. And I thought what I would do, given that it's Mother's Day, I would read you a prayer in Chicken Soup for the Soul. It's actually the end of the book, and it's just titled A Prayer for My Mother. Dear God, now that I am no longer young, I have friends whose mothers have passed away. I have heard these sons and daughters say they never really fully appreciated their mothers until it was too late to tell them. I am blessed with a dear mother who is still alive. I appreciate her more each day. My mother does not change, but I do. As I grow older and wiser, I realize what an extraordinary person she is. How sad that I am unable to speak these words in her presence, but they flow easily from my pen. How does a daughter begin to thank her mother for the life itself, for the love, patience, and just plain hard work that go into raising a child, for running after a toddler, for understanding a moody teenager, for tolerating a college student who knows everything, for waiting for the day when a daughter realizes how wise her mother really is. How does a grown woman thank her mother for continuing to be a mother, for being ready with advice when asked, or remaining silent when it is most appreciated, for not saying, I told you so, when she could have uttered those words dozens of times, for being essentially herself, loving, thoughtful, patient, and forgiving. I don't know how, dear God, except to ask you to bless her richly as she deserves, and to help me live up to the example she has set. I pray that I will look as good in the eyes of my children as my mother looks in mine. So thank you for being here this morning. I really appreciate it. And now if we can, we're going to do our closing song and then our closing affirmation. The words for the song will be up there. What? No, they won't. Okay. Just imagine if you were.
And here we go. A beautiful song about being peace on earth. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be, with God as creator, family all are we. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my joyous vow, to take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me.
So if we could do our closing
There you
affirmation and you could recite after me. Something wonderful is happening to me right now.
Something wonderful is happening to me right now.
It is this thing called life.
It is this thing called life.
Life is in my mind.
Life is in my mind.
Life is in my body.
Life is in my body.
Life is in my affairs.
Life is in my affairs.
I receive it.
I receive it.
I share it.
I share it.
I am it.
I am it.
And I accept it.
And I accept it.
Just the way that it is.
Just the way that it is.
And just the way that it is not.
And just the way that it is not.
Thank you, life.
Thank you, Lord.
And so it is.
And so it is.
So thank you.
Very nice. With that,